I replaced my $1,400 M4 Pro Mac Mini with an ROG Ally X. I wanted to see if it could handle my day-to-day work, as well as allow me to play all my favorite games. I used the same setup for my Ally X that I did for my Mac Mini, except for a couple of changes for gaming. I'll go over my desk setup and gear a little later on in the video. One of my main uses of the Mac Mini is editing videos for this channel, and even though I knew the Mac Mini was more powerful, I still wanted to see how much I was giving up by switching to the Ally X. I ran Cinebench R23, which tests CPU performance and creative tasks. For the test, I set the ROG Ally to performance mode and dedicated 6 GB to graphics. In single-core performance, the Mac scored 2,232, while the Ally X scored a close 1,689. There was a bigger gap in multi-core performance. Here the Mac scored 19,731, while the Ally X scored just 9,895. And those numbers definitely translated to real-world performance. On the Mac, I use Final Cut Pro. It's fast, it's intuitive, and it just fits my workflow. On the Ally X, I tried editing with DaVinci Resolve 20. For me, there was definitely a learning curve going from Final Cut Pro's interface to DaVinci Resolve. That said, after some time relearning the controls, I was able to perform essential editing tasks: cutting, basic color correction, adding titles, and even recording voiceovers. Speaking of voiceovers, I did encounter a little quirk. I couldn't get it to work from the edit page. However, when I switched to the Fairlight page, it worked as expected. It's a minor inconvenience, and I'm sure it's something that Blackmagic will eventually fix. Performance-wise, editing in DaVinci Resolve on the Ally X wasn't as fast as on my Mac Mini, which isn't surprising considering the hardware differences. I shoot with a Sony DSLR, and all of my footage is in 4K. The Ally X handled it fairly well, but there were times when DaVinci slowed down. For example, I was playing back a sequence that had a simple title and transition, and right when it hit that part, the video started to stutter and really slowed down. It didn't crash or anything, but it definitely wasn't smooth. Despite the occasional slowdown, nothing about the experience made the setup unusable. It just required some patience. In terms of exports, I dropped about 24 minutes worth of 4K video into DaVinci. I did some light color grading and added a couple of transitions and titles. I then exported the video while having the Ally X set to performance mode. That 24 minutes of lightly edited video took about 16 minutes to export in performance mode. I then ran the export again, but this time I set the Ally X to 30 watts turbo. That same 24 minutes of lightly edited 4K video now took about 10 minutes and 30 seconds to export. Bottom line, if the Ally X were my only computer, I could still get editing done in DaVinci Resolve 20. It's not the fastest workflow, but it's absolutely doable. The best part about using my Ally X as a daily PC is how easy it is to switch into gaming mode. But before I get into that, if you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel and lets YouTube know you want to see more videos like this. Now, the M4 Pro Mac Mini is more than capable of playing games. Here are the numbers I got when I tested it against the Ally X using the Geekbench 6 benchmark. For CPU single-core performance, the Mac Mini scored 3,935, while the Ally X scored a little under 2,500. In multi-core, there was a bigger difference. The Mac Mini scored 20,400, while the Ally X scored just over 11,000. And in GPU compute, there was a huge difference. The Mac Mini scored 60,758, while the Ally X scored just under 30,000. So the problem I have with using the Mac Mini as a gaming device isn't how much power it has. I purchased the majority of the games I own through Steam. This is my Steam library as shown on my Mac Mini, but when I filter the Steam library to show only my Mac compatible games, it drops to only 10 titles, which means I'm not going to be able to play a game like Call of Duty unless I subscribe to something like Xbox Cloud or GeForce Now. With the Ally X, I can install and run all my games without having to subscribe to a cloud-based service. When I'm ready to start gaming, I just press the Armory Crate button and jump straight into my game library. I also still have access to the quick settings, so I can easily change my power mode, set the refresh rate, activate the performance overlay, and more. I was able to play all my favorite shooters in desktop mode on the Ally X with the right settings. It wasn't on the same level as a console or a full gaming PC, but it was just good enough to keep me in the game without making me feel like I had to go out and buy something more powerful. I was able to run Doom Dark Ages in turbo mode at 30 watts with a resolution of 1080p and 120Hz refresh rate. Again, it wasn't console quality, and my average frames per second wasn't great. It was only in the 30s, but it was definitely playable. My frames per second were better with Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Here I was able to get all the way up into the 70s. With Marvel Rivals, my FPS dipped to the low to mid 60s. But I was still really impressed with the graphics quality. And Fragpunk performed really well. Here I was able to get over 100 FPS throughout. I ran the BaseMark Web 3.0 benchmark to get a sense of how each system handles browser-based tasks, things like Google Docs, YouTube, and Canva. At first I thought internet speed might affect the results, but it turns out everything is processed locally, so it's really measuring how fast the system is and not how fast your Wi-Fi is. The Mac Mini scored 2,754, while the Ally X scored 1,895. On paper, that's about a 37% difference. But when I actually use the Ally X for writing scripts with Google Docs or designing thumbnails in Canva, everything works smoothly. I couldn't tell any difference between how the two performed. Okay, let me go over my desk setup and some of my gear. So this screen that you see here in landscape mode is the Gigabyte M32U. It's a 4K panel with a max refresh rate of 144 Hz. My second monitor is a 24-inch KTC display I found on Amazon. It's 1440p 100 Hz and surprisingly solid for the price. I keep it in portrait mode and it's perfect for previewing files or transferring between folders. For the keyboard, I swapped my full-size Logitech MX keys for the Razer Deathstalker. It's technically a gaming keyboard, but the low-profile design makes it super comfortable for both gaming and typing. I switch between two different mice. I've used the MX Master for years, and it's perfect for all my day-to-day computer stuff. It has great ergonomics, and its side-scrolling is a must for video editing. Also, it allows me to switch between different devices using the button on the bottom. I switched to the Final Mouse ULX Competition for gaming. It's made of carbon fiber composite, it's incredibly lightweight at just 40 grams, and the cutouts give it a nice grippy texture. For controller gaming, I've been using the Scuf Envision Pro, and it's honestly one of the best controllers I've ever used. It fits my hand really well. The grip has just the right texture to keep it secure, and all the buttons, sticks, and triggers feel solid and responsive. The adjustable triggers are a nice touch too, especially for first-person shooters. It also supports remapping with Scuf's IQ software. I haven't needed to use it much myself, but it's great that the option's there if I ever want to customize the layout. Everything runs through my CalDigit TS4 dock. It connects my monitors and other accessories and has SD card slots so I can transfer videos from my Sony camera to the Ally X for editing. Now this dock is excellent, but it's also around $400. If you're looking for something more affordable, there are plenty of solid docks that'll do the job for a fraction of the price. Now, as much as I enjoyed using the Ally X as my main desktop PC, I eventually did go back to my Mac Mini. I spent way too much money on the Mac and way too much time learning programs like Final Cut Pro to just give it up. But the great thing is, with my setup, I don't actually have to choose one or the other. My CalDigit dock makes it easy to switch between both systems with just a single cable, so I get the best of both worlds. But if you're thinking about using the Ally X as your only desktop, yes, it can absolutely do the job. I'll see you in the next one.